gentlemen, it is your favorite dark sorcerer here. And tonight, I'd like to discuss a question that was presented to me on one of my platforms. Okay. And the question was, because I speak on a lot of different grimoire traditions, what books would I recommend? But also, the second part of the question was, what are my thoughts on Frater U.D? Okay, his work, and is it associated with the Grimoire systems? Okay, now first off, these are very good questions. Okay, the latter part, that was something that, well, let's just say I don't see it as being a part of the Grimoire systems in per se. However, I think, and I feel that the individual that asked the question was an adept in the arts, but more of an amateur. Okay, somebody just starting out and looking for guidance. So, um, the first thing I want to say is I'm not really a big fan of Frater U.D. I do own a couple of his work, his books, total of three to be precise. Now, two of which I'm really not a big fan of, and I'll explain why. So I'm going to start here, okay? The first one is High Magic, Theory and Practice, and this is volume one, okay? It looks like this, okay? Let me see if I can't get that glare going for you. There you go. And it's by Frater U.D, okay? The other one The other one is High Magic 2, Volume 2, Theory and Practice Expanded. Okay. Same thing. It's by Frater U.D. And then the third book is Practical Sigil Magic. Okay. By Frater U.D. Now, first of all, Practical Sigil Magic is something that I would highly recommend to you. In fact, I'd recommend it to anybody looking to get into the ancient practices. Okay, by ancient, I'm talking pre-Christian. Okay, pre-JCI, Judo-Christian institutions. Okay, those of you who are looking to get into serious ritualized works, I would recommend that book to you because it will teach you, or at least give you a basic understanding of how to create a sigil. Okay. And when you're working with hieroglyphics, it's something completely different. Okay. You got to remember that European traditions versus African or even Mayan or Aztec traditions are completely different. Okay. Some of them use hieroglyphics, depictions of animals. Others use elemental based or even athame, if you wish, knives. Today, the knives are associated with the alphabets. Okay. So you got to understand the basic differences between them. All right. But so I do recommend the Sigil Magic to you, Practical Sigil Magic. That is actually a very good book, and it was actually well written if you can get past most of the dramatic BS dogma that's in there. Okay. And actually get the fundamental basis behind it. As for the other two, I don't I don't really see them as being a part of the Grimoire system because of the fact that yes, they speak on demonolatry. Okay. but they don't go into actual depth. They deal with, like, say, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, Lucifer, beings like this, but in reality, it does not go into a lot of topics. It doesn't go into a lot of detail. Okay. And when you get into the book, you got one chapter that is based off what is it? You got a different chapter that talks about the science, a different chapter based off angelic stuff, another chapter that's like part two of demonolatry, and then you go into two or three other chapters and different topics. It's really chaotic. Okay, so High Magic Volume 1 and 2 by Frater U.D. I would not recommend for an amateur. Um, I wouldn't even recommend them for anybody really, because they give a misconception. It would be like getting into Anton Zandalevay's Satanic Bible and reading a list of demons out of the Book of Belial, specifically that of the invocation to Satan. Okay, and reading off the names and not realizing that all these names are just a name for a devil from various different traditions worldwide. Okay, getting into these two books will literally show you a basic component. How should I say this? Think of it as, let's say, for example, if you're mopping a floor, everybody understands this theory. Okay, in this practice, you're mopping a floor. You've got the chemical, you have the bucket, you have the mop, okay? And you know the basic movements that you have to do with the mop when you're mopping the floor. I mean, I understand, a lot of people today have one of those electronic sprayers and just, the pad that goes on the bottom. I'm talking the old school way. Okay, just to let you know. So think about this for just a minute. What if you didn't have the bucket? What if you didn't have that one component that puts everything together? That's Frater U.D.'s books for you. Plain and simple. I don't recommend these books to you because you're missing a huge piece to the puzzle. Okay? Now you'll notice down below I actually wrote the books and by the author. Okay? So you will see those in the link below. All right? So, anyways, moving on. When you get into the Grimoire systems, you're going to be going through a lot of the more basic Grimoire traditions. Okay, I'm talking the Clavicle of Solomon, also known as the Grimoire of Solomon. Okay, or the Keys of Solomon. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that there's actually a scroll, more like a text if you think about it. A small little text that goes along with it that wasn't incorporated into the original grimoire. It's the same thing with the essays from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Same exact thing. They're just not included into these practices. So you will have to come to see this, and you will come to see it. Now, if you're into that, or you're into, say, the Constitution of Pope Honorius, also known as the Grimoire of Honorius, then you'll see that one as well. The third major grimoire that people go by is the Grand Grimoire, also known as the True Grimoire. Okay, these are the three most recognized grimoires that people tend to go for. However, there is a lot of other traditions out there and other grimoire tradition, practices like the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage. Okay, put out by Mathers. You have the Magus Volume 1 and 2 put out by Francis Barrett, 18th century. Okay. You have the Red Book of Appin that was written roughly around the 13th century. He was the scribe of Vlad the Impaler, known today as Dracula. Okay. It was a nice piece of. It was just actually one of my favorites to practice because of the fact that the Red Book of Appin is totally unique. Okay, it's literally unique. It's like the Grimoire of Dagon. Okay, completely unique. So I would recommend that one. And there's several more that I haven't even mentioned. Okay, but I want to keep this brief. So the main question was, because I've spoken on these in the past, what books would I recommend? Okay, now I'm going to show you some of them. More modern day, you have a book that was published originally in 1949, but it was republished in 1971, 1979, and again in 1998. Okay. And it's called Ritual Magic. And it looks like this. Okay. Elizabeth M. Butler published this. Okay. Very good information. Now, those of you getting into demonology, you've probably heard the name Mephistopheles, the Mesopotamian blood pact maker. Okay, you probably even known the history and the story of Faust, the Faustian deal, the Faustbark. Okay, which was actually a Germanic text originally from the 15th century. Published again roughly around the early 1600s, if I remember correctly. Elizabeth M. Butler wrote The Fortunes of Faust, which revolves around the play, the myth, and the demon. Okay? Very good books. I recommend both of those books to you for those of you looking to get into the Grimoire systems. Now, like I said, most of these books only touch on maybe 3 or 4 different books. Okay, Grimoire system, type books. So I want you to keep this in mind. There is a lot of it, like the Soya or the let's just say there's a lot of them and leave it at that. The next one is a book of experimentation. And before I go into that, let me just check something real fast in this one here. Uh, there it is, right there. One page back. Yeah, this was 1952, 1979, and again in 1998. The last time this was published was in 1998. And it was a tradition. Yeah. Okay. Now, this next book is by Richard Kieckhefer, and it's called Forbidden Rites, a Necromancer's Manual of the 15th Century. Looks like this. Highly recommend this one, namely because of the fact that it talks about the 7 forbidden rites, but it also goes into a lot of experimentation from various different grimoire texts. And it's based around necromancy. Okay, black magic. Highly recommend it to you for those of you who want to learn about history, the experiments that were done, and most importantly, the elements and all that fun stuff. Okay. I actually enjoyed that book the most out of my entire library. That's probably one of the ones that I savor the most, is that one there. Okay. The next book is called Conjuring Spirits, Texts and Traditions of Medieval Ritual Magic. And it's edited by Claire Fanger. Okay. Now, before I move on to this book, I want to go back into Forbidden Rites real fast and kind of give you an update. It was published in copyright 1997, published in 1998. Okay. This book was originally Library of Congress cataloging and publication data. Very, very good book, like I said. Now, The Conjuring Spirits, on the other hand, I really like this book. Now, as you know, I'm an educator, okay? I'm not just a teacher, an educator, and an actual practitioner. But when you get into something that is completely enlightening, intelligent, you will not find very many texts, books, or even grimoires that were, how should I say this, written in a format of a PhD. Okay. This book basically surrounds the scholarship aspects of it. This means theory and practice. It means the overview of these grimoires that were spoken of inside of it. And like I said, the ones I named off earlier, the true grimoire, the true grimoire, the grand grimoire, um, getting into the Constitution of Pope Honorius, the Clavicle of Solomon. These books were talked about heavily in this one book. Okay. And the author, like I said, spoke to you, the readers, in an intelligent manner. Think of a college course where a professor is teaching you history. Same intelligence. He's not that this individual is not teaching you like a child. Not like some of these other grimoires that you'd read where the spelling is atrocious, okay? Where you actually have to read with from various different things because you got a word that's supposed to be, say, let's say magic, but they spell it with a different vowel, okay? Or a word that's supposed to be without vowel, with very little vowels, but with nouns, pronouns, and everything that have completely different spellings. Okay, I'm talking that type of atrocious verbalism within their writing, where you actually have to sit there and contemplate. Okay, what am I reading? Because you have to read down these pages very, very slowly, like in the Magus by Francis Barrett, or the how every other word is praised to God or praised to Allah, like in the the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. You know, you get into the more educational aspect, like Agrippa's Three Books of Occult Philosophy. Another major thing in astrology and herbalism and alchemy and geomancy aspects. Okay, highly intelligently written. It's like they just left the religious propaganda out. Okay, and they focus solely on the practices. That was Agrippa for you. Okay, so when I think of a book that's educational, talks a lot about various different grimoires, puts in the planet, the grid, the sum, and the digital aspects of astrology, numerology, getting into the grimoires themselves. I can't think of anything better than this book right here. Okay? This is probably the best book that you will ever find out there on spiritual conjuring. Because when you get into the Black Raven, also known as the threefold coercion of hell, you'll notice how they put the angels first and then the demonic, okay, second. And then you'll have the like three or four pages of just bullshit that doesn't have anything to do with the magical processes. Like the inscribed, signature of a specific being who's ruled by a certain angel, or getting into, say, for an example, the grimoire of Armadale. You know, yeah, completely different because that's completely different from the dictionary Infernal. Okay, which has four major parts to it. Okay, that's one big ass book right there. So and if you're lucky enough to get that in PDF, which I was, and I posted it in a number of different groups that I'm associated with on Facebook, and not just my own. It's kind of interesting to see how you read down through it. You get into the discovery of witchcraft by Reginald Scott or Nicholas Remy's demonolatry. You're going to see a whole different aspect, but they're always done by a JCI perspective because that's what a lot of these grimoire traditions were surrounding, not just that of hermeneutics. So you really got to keep that in mind when you're getting into these traditions. So when it comes to grimoire systems, there are a lot of texts and there's a lot of grimoires out there that's been written over the last 500 years. Hell, even the better part of 1,000 years. However, when you get into the independent systems of magic worldwide and you immerse yourself into their cultures, you're going to see the polar opposites in a deadlock, so to speak. Let's take Slavic witchcraft for an example. In Slavic witchcraft, they have two main beings, Belobog and Chernobog. Chernobog being considered the dark god. Belobog is considered to be the god of light, all things good, whereas Chernobog is the god of destruction, all things of the demonic, and all that fun stuff. Now, these two are spoken of more than any other being in that pantheon. Okay, it would be like going into Greek mythology and seeing Zeus versus Hades. But wait, here's a monkey wrench for you. There's Poseidon. Okay, the three main brothers of Greek mythology. But then again, if you get into Egyptian mythology, you have Ra, the sun god, versus Anubis, the lord of the dead, or that of Set, the devil practitioner, the god of what's considered to be the devil in that tradition. Okay, god of storms and chaos. You go into Inca or Incan practices. You have Supe versus Inti. Inti being the god of light and life versus Supe, the god of death. Okay, Loki versus Thor in Norse mythology. Okay, um, Odin versus Hell. Okay, same exact thing. You're just going into different parts of the world and seeing the same perspective. Even if you get into the Necronomicon, you're going to see Marduk versus Tiamat. Zoroastrianism, again, Ahura Mazda, the mad god versus that of Ahriman. Okay, so right there you have the opposing forces. So the only difference between them being versus gods of certain dimensions in the past tense, here we have the JCI influence, and they are associated with angels and demons, good versus evil, heaven versus hell. Okay, you look at Dante's Inferno, the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey. You get into Paradise Lost, you're going to see the exact same thing. But if you get into the Dead Sea Scrolls and you get into, say, for an example, the Scroll of Amron, you see Belial being the leader of the sons and daughters of darkness versus Michael, the leader of the sons and daughters of light. Okay. So, like I said, there's a lot of different systems out there with a lot of different perspectives, but yet many of these grimoire traditions remain the same. When you get into the sources and resources and references and all that good stuff that will help you further your career, you're going to notice that there are other less valued grimoires out there. Like I said, the Red Book of Appin, where you have to deny God 3 times, deny the church 3 times. You have to go out into the middle of the woods. You know, you have to bury certain things. You have to follow the wizard and become an apprentice of that wizard. You know, and a few other things. You know, there's Grimoire of Raziel or Ramiel. You know, the Grimoire of Asmodeus, known as the Book of Tobit. Okay, you're going to see a whole different view of these beings. The poetical texts shows what happened in the 3 days that the JCI's so-called savior went into the underworld and visited hell. For those 3 days, he removed Beelzebub, the Lord of Flies, from the throne and placed Satan on the throne. Okay, that is why Satan is known today as the bad guy, the murderer, the tempter, yada yada yada. When in reality, he never murdered anyone. So, hell, even the Bible says that too, and I consider the Bible one of the many grimoires over the last 3 decades, in one form or another. It's just another book of demonology to me. Okay, and it really is because you got 15 different entities within that one book. Okay, and it all goes back to the Vulgate Bible, the very first Bible put out by the JCI in the 16th century. But wait for it, here's the twist. The Vulgate Bible was originally part of the Codex Gigas, known as the Devil's Bible. Wow. And guess where the JCI's foundations were formulated? From the Codex Gigas, 2nd century. The Black Robes, the monks of the Black Robe. Ironic, isn't it? So when you get into these traditions, do your homework. Okay? Don't be afraid to branch out into other systems. Check out the old gods. I guarantee it, you're going to see a huge difference. If you want to worship demons as a demonolator, if you want to worship spirits as a Satanist, feel free. You want to do it as a necromancer, feel free. I'm a necromancer. I used to go by the name Satanist. I used to practice Satanism for 30 years before getting into necromancy. But I guarantee it, when you get into whatever path that fits you, you are going to learn and be upon a journey that is, well, let's just say you're going to evolve. You're going to learn. But if you're going to speak on them, you're going to practice on it. I would highly recommend backing up everything that you say, and I would always recommend making yourself available to the public. Okay? And believe me, when you step on toes, you're going to make some enemies. I've made my fair share, and I just played nice. And I get called names. Woohoo! Welcome to being the bad guy, right? You reveal truth, you become the outsider. Oh well, it's a good thing I'm comfortable with it. Question is, are you? That's the thing you got to come up with. And notice Men Like Gods is back. It's good to have you on the channel again. It's good to see you. Yeah, that is a very good one. Sefer Raziel, Liber Salamantas, the Skinner edition. That is a very good text right there. But if you want to get into protective charms, rings, and pendants, I would recommend. Oh, what the hell is the name of that little grimoire? It's was it the Black Hen? I got it up here on my bookshelf. I'll actually talk about it later, but let me just. I'm gonna pick up my computer so I can come over here real fast. Let me see here. What I do with it? Ah, the Black Pellet. That's the name of it. The Black Pellet. I would recommend the Black Pellet to you, Men Like Gods, because you will definitely learn a lot more from that one and understand where the protective and seals, but also go into other areas such as finances, monetary things, getting into, let's just say, the lusts of the world, if you wish. If you're into that type of thing. I'm not. I'm more spiritual. That's just me. But the this grimoire, this tome, is something that will walk you through the land of Magi. Okay, the Black Pullet is probably one of the most resourceful information when it comes to seals, sigils, and runes. Okay, writings, what we call today alphabets, depictions, hieroglyphics, for a wide range of things. I highly recommend it to you. And in fact, I recommend it to all of you if you want to get into that aspect. I would also recommend that you get into terminology as well, like the mage, the sage, the necromancer, the hexa, the strega, the yeshi, the agi. Okay, and these are topics that range from Egypt all the way up into European countries. Not witches and warlocks, even though these have been synonymous with good versus evil. Okay, and along with Wicca and quote unquote paganism. But like I said, your path is your own, just like mine is mine. So look into them. All right. I want to thank that it is. It is a very good read. And you're welcome for the recommendations, Men Like Gods. So with that said, I'm going to end this video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. I will read them. I do have accounts on Timber, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and of course here on YouTube. So, you know, it may take me a little bit because I'm not online all the time, especially these days. I've got a lot going on, a lot of exciting things. So feel free to jump on and just, leave a message or a comment down below. Ask your questions, and I will get to them. Okay. It may take a little bit of time, so I do ask that you be patient. All right. And you are welcome. Exactly, Men Like Gods. All right. So have a good one. Have a good night, day. I know, depending on where you are in the world.